What you choose for your first project can spell success or doom for your crochet or knitting journey. I tried crocheting 4 times over 30 years before it finally stuck. And the difference? What project I chose to do first. So I'm gonna give you 4 tips today so you can bypass all of my failed attempts. So tip number 1 is a little bit of self-reflection actually, and that is to think about yourself and how you like to go about starting something new. Do you like to feel really solid, like you know what you're doing, or do you like to jump right in and feel like you're accomplishing something? If you're the first type and you really want to know what you're doing, then I recommend that you start with doing some swatches. You can get stitches where you just make little rectangles of a stitch in crochet. You learn how the yarn works, you learn how the hook works. That works great. That worked great for my sister when she started knitting. I'm the opposite sort. I wanted to feel like I was accomplishing something and not just creating and sort of like wasting my time. It's not really a waste, but that's how it felt to me. And so I'm the kind where I wanted to jump right into a project right away. The first stitches I wanted to do, I wanted to be part of a finished product. So my first tip is to think about yourself and which way you think sounds nicer to you, and then base your starting in your crochet or knitting journey off of that. Tip number 2 is to choose a solid piece project. Now with crocheting, granny squares are really common and a lot of people love them. 30 years ago, when I very first learned how to crochet from my mom, she taught me how to make a granny square and I was like, excellent. And I had blanket goals and I started making granny squares. Well, 6 granny squares later, I had 6 different sizes of granny square. Hint, if you haven't done them before, they're supposed to all be the same size and then you tile them together. That did not work. Because of tension, which basically means like how tightly or how loosely you hold your yarn as you're working it over your hook. And beginners are still trying to figure that out. And so even though I was using the same yarn and the same hook, all of my squares came out different sizes, which meant they were not going to be usable in the blanket the way that I had wanted. And that was so discouraging to my teenage self that I just completely gave up and didn't touch crochet again for years. So what I recommend for absolute beginners is don't do something like that. Don't do something where you need separate pieces, whether it's granny squares or a sweater with a body and different arms that you're then going to put together. Don't do something with separate pieces. Do something that's all one piece. So as your tension is fluctuating a little bit, it'll sort of work together as you go, and you'll be able to have a workable project at the end. My tip number 3 is to choose something small. When I was a teenager, you heard I had blanket goals. Well, that was no different when I decided to start trying crocheting again 15-ish years later. Went back to visit my mom and she was crocheting blankets and they were huge and gorgeous and beautiful and they were draped over the back of the couch and I was like, this is what I want to do. So my mom sent me home with a skein of yarn and a hook. Thanks, Mom. And I started working on blankets, but they're big. They take hours and hours. This is not one of mine. This is one that my mom made. They take so long and I couldn't keep it up. There was no endorphins for the end of a project to help me like it again, and so I gave up. Fast forward to 5 years later, went back and I visited my mom more than that, but I was visiting her again. She was crocheting again, because of course, and again I was like bit by this little bug. Oh, I want to do this. She sent me home with a skein of yarn and a crochet hook. Again, who knows where the first ones were. And I was like, I had blanket dreams. I'm like, I'm gonna make a blanket. It's gonna be massive. And I spent forever crocheting the longest chain, which felt great because I know how to make chains. And then by the time I was trying to do my 3rd row back and forth, it took so long and I just lost steam. I couldn't do it. It was too big of a project for a beginner. Instead of that, I recommend you start with something small, like really small. Here is my success story. The 4th time I chose a mug cozy. It's little, behold how little. It wraps around a mug. It keeps it cozy and your hands warm and cozy. And I finished it. I chose something that was beginner specific, that was small enough. It was all in one piece. And if you look at the rows, these vertical rows here, they're not all exactly the same length. Some are a little bit shorter, some are a little bit longer. It's a beginner piece, but I'm so proud of this. I actually finished it. It was small enough where I could complete it in 2 days, I think. Only in 2 sittings, maybe 2 or 3 hours because I was slow and had to look up how to do a single crochet every 5 minutes. But I was able to complete it. It was small enough for a beginner to be able to feel that sense of accomplishment. And I'm really glad that I did this. After this, there was no turning back. And I immediately went to my next project and my next and my next. So after that first successful project, I wanted to get my next project going again. But having learned already that I needed something that was small enough, I thought, let me choose really carefully what my next project is going to be. So Pinterest was my best friend. I went into Pinterest and was looking specifically for beginner-friendly projects. And actually what happened is I was looking for my friend. I had a friend who had just bought a kit for beginner crocheters, and she'd made a little amigurumi. And she was talking to me, I don't know if I'm ever gonna be able to do something else without a kit. And I said, I bet you there are tons of easy beginner projects. Mind you, at this point, I was not crocheting on my own. And so I went on Pinterest to look for her, actually. And I found so many projects that were small, they seemed simple enough, and I thought, this is great. So I'm sending all these over to my friend. And that's when I was like, I bet I could try one of these for myself. That's how actually I found the mug cozy pattern, was from that whole pattern roundup for her. And I think the success part of that was that it was specifically labeled a beginner project too. It's not just that it was small. There are some projects that are not beginner friendly. Lots of amigurumi have lots of intricate parts to them. Doilies, for example, have lots of intricate parts and stitches and different patterns that you have to follow. I would not consider most of those beginner friendly, but this one really was. So my last tip is just that, find something that's specifically for beginners, for absolute beginners. There are lots of patterns out there. And I'm actually preparing a video now that's gonna be a roundup of some of those patterns for you. Be looking for that in a couple weeks. But in the meantime, before that one comes out, I recommend you watch this video here. This is all of the projects that I did since I began in summer of 2023. You can actually see the progression. I show this one first, my mug cozy first, and I show the progression and how it comes down through the different projects that I tried after that. They gradually grew in complexity, and now I'm working on my first blanket. So thanks for watching today, and I'll talk to you later. If you want to make sure you get notified about my next video that's coming up, go ahead and subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon, and then you'll get notifications so you don't miss a thing.